A couple of years ago, I was bringing spey up through the Black Country in Cittern. A flight of locks there called Braids. It was quite early in the morning. We were working spey up the locks, and there was this very elderly Sikh gentleman going for a walk down the locks. And he suddenly stopped with tears in his eyes to see us. We got talking, and he'd come to England as a very young man, probably a mid-teen, to take a job in the pipeworks in Tipton. And that very first day he'd landed, he'd walked down the same locks, into a Black Country whose every workshop still rang with the sounds of process, whose every chimney still blackened the sky with industrial effluvia. And he'd gone down the locks that morning and seen a working boat just like spey coming up one of the old wooden oil tankers, the same bright colours on the cabin, the same thump of the engine. It further shocked him in that time to see white people living in such poverty. And he'd worked his time, he'd retired, had kids, grandchildren, and every day he still walked down the locks first thing in the morning, never expecting to see that first scene played out for him again. It was an extraordinary meeting, and we left as friends, our days deepened by it, and it really underlines why we keep this old boat, and moments like that really make it all worthwhile. The waterways, though, is the timelessness of them. These working boats and the methods of operating them are things that have been arrived at over hundreds of years by people who've devoted their whole lives to working out the best possible way of doing it. There is no better way. The working boats that provide the fuel right across the network, not just in London, are not just anachronisms, old boats still doing the work. They remain the best way of getting that work done. Having seen Clover come down river, I made my way pretty quickly up to South Island Marina. I dumped spey at the edge of the marina and asked if I could volunteer on the coal run, and they agreed to humour me. My hosts at South Island were Michael and Nicola. They invited me round for dinner. I took a bottle of wine which was added to an already well-supplied rack, and we had this vegetarian pie. It was delicious, all mysterious chunks and gravy. And we talked about boats and fuel and coal. Michael lives the life of it, an ever-deepening quest for knowledge. It's a never-ending merry-go-round of chine angles, big ends, composite bottoms, injectors. You're right there, Mike. Nicola was brought up to it too. A work week of lifting 25 kilogram sacks of coal, giving her an aura of grace and poise. We chatted further. A chat that was only interrupted when her dog Clayton put his head on the table with the very reasonable view of trying to clear up all the uneaten pieces of pie. He's a geriatric Dalmatian, still trying to hump absolutely everything in sight. A worthy ambition hampered by his increasingly unreliable back legs. He's a good dog, said Michael, and I thought briefly the conversation might move on from boats and fuel, but he's got a terrible problem with the eco-logs. That's right, said Nicola. We left him in with some in the coal scuttle, and when we came back there was sawdust everywhere. Complete carnage. The other fuel boat that works out of there is called Emu. That works upriver to Hertford. Skipper's a guy called Ben, he might be in as well. Ben likes to live his coal boating on the hard edge of the possible, boating hard into the night, putting trust in reverse, living entirely on cans of Monster Energy drink and never ever lighting the range. He returns back to base with skin blackened beyond the influence of any soap yet invented. And I also know he's come down directly from the cauldron tonight, so if you want to check that proposition out for yourself. His assistant at that point's a guy called Sean. He'd found the waterways a very typical way. The river was down at the end of his street growing up in Tottenham. Looking for somewhere cheap to live, he'd moved onto the water so he could remain in London even on a fairly low wage. He got himself a barge and moved up to South Island where he got a mooring. He too had fallen in love with the coal trade and went out every Saturday. In my usual blunt way, I just had to ask the question that was on my mind, and I said, Sean, what's it like being a black guy living on the water? And he said, well, people don't say much, but you get the stares, like, is he supposed to be there? He said, me and my girlfriend hired this boat and we took it through the heart of Birmingham, and they were looking at us like we weren't supposed to be there at all. That's right, said Ben, chiming in from the tiller as we went upriver. Ben said, sometimes people look at me like they want to say, hey Ben, do you know you've got a black guy on your boat? Thing is though, said Sean, after we'd all had a good laugh about it, it's very hard to be racist to somebody you rely on for your essentials. Every week we bring in these bags of coal and these nets of wood and the gas, and that's families that are staying warm. That's babies that are staying warm this winter. It's really important really important work, and people are so grateful for it. 7:30 a.m, the two boats reverse out of the branch into the main line of the river. They're tied up end to end, breasted up in opposition. In the main channel of the river, they pirouette round under power until they're pointing the right way. Emu upriver to Hertford and on to Bishop Stortford. Clover downriver to Limehouse and then up to King's Cross. The lines are let slip and the fuel run is on.